Well, hey, everybody. It is so good to see you. Welcome to North Shore. I'm very glad to have you here, and those are online. Great to have you guys with us as well. My name is Jonathan Wolfgang. I'm one of the pastors, and just good to see you. And, this is that time of year when you start to see signs pop up for haunted houses. I don't know if you're into that or not, but you'll sometimes see a billboard or you'll go into a coffee shop or whatever advertising one, and some of them are just kind of benign little family-friendly deals where some people dress up in costume and jump out at you. Some of them are terrifying, right? Like, brag how terrifying they are. One of my most vivid memories of my growing up years, my parents decided it would be a good idea to take me to a haunted house as a kid. And I don't really exactly remember how old I was. I just remember vividly. It was kind of a lightweight one, but I remember my dad carrying me through this thing. I was so terrified. He picked me up, and I had my head buried in his shoulder the entire time. I was so afraid. I was like 16. I mean, this thing wrecked me. No, that's not true. I was much younger. But what I do remember looking up from my dad's shoulder just as we were walking out of the thing, and I'm like, picture this like it was yesterday. There was this guy dressed like Frankenstein waving at me like this as I walked out. He felt so sad. I was just wailing in tears. This was probably 40 years ago or so. I hadn't been back to one since, okay? Really, up until a couple of years ago, we were trick-or-treating with some friends in their neighborhood, and one of the stops near their house, one of their neighbors every year would set up this little homemade haunted house thing in his garage. And he'd set it up with tarps and curtains, and you'd sort of walk your way through his garage. That doesn't sound sketchy at all, does it? Not a bad idea. Anyway, throughout this thing, there are all these creepy displays. He had all these mannequins and stuff, but the thing was, not all of them were mannequins. Some of them were actually people dressed up, and they'd jump at you. You know what I'm talking about. Well, of course, my kids want to go through this thing, right? My three little ones. And so, Dad, take us through. And so I try to act all cool, but I did. I called out before we went into this thing, I'm bringing some young kids through, go easy on us, kind of a thing, right? Which was sort of for them, but it was actually for me, to be perfectly honest with you. Because I hate that stuff. And we survived. Some people love stuff like that, like scary movies or TV shows. I just can't do it. This last week, I came across an article about a new show that's come out on one of the streaming services that is so terrifying, apparently, that people are reporting it's causing them to pass out, to burst into tears, to be unable to sleep. There were even reports of people feeling like they needed to vomit, okay, because of this show. That doesn't sound fun to me. I don't know. But for some people, that's their thing. But for even those of you who enjoy a good scary movie or a jump scare or a haunted house or whatever, even you have your limits. Because it's one thing to be scared by a movie or whatever. It's another thing to live every day afraid, uncertain, unsure, fearful. I think it's one of the reasons that this Psalm 23, is so well known, so widespread, so widely loved, because this psalm we've been looking at, it talks directly to the fears that so many of us deal with in our everyday lives. Psalm 23, some of the best known words in the Bible. If you go to your neighbor, they may not know anything about the Bible, nothing about church, none of that, and you say, complete this phrase, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not. Most of them will say want, right? Because this is so in our culture. It's in movies, it's in TV shows, it's needle-pointed onto a pillow at your grandma's house right now, right? It's in the fabric of culture. And part of it is because it's such elegant, beautiful poetry, and it is. But I think it's deeper than that. I think it's because this psalm speaks directly to our deepest fears that we as human beings deal with. Fears like this. Does anyone really care? Where will I get what I need in life? Will I have enough? How will I know what path to take? What if I make a mistake? What if something bad happens in my life? Will I be safe? What if people cross me or come after me? What does the future hold? I mean, these are questions every human being struggles with. So let me just ask you, which fears do you struggle with? Is it worry about some struggle you're facing? Is it anxiety about all the violence we see in our world? Is it uncertainty about what the future holds? Even though these words were written 3,000 years ago, they're as fresh and profound today as they were when they were first written so long ago. By this point, many of us have memorized them, but here they are again. Psalm 23, a psalm of David, says, "The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you're with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever." And we've been digging in to those beautiful words. And we talked about this idea, this basic premise: the Lord is my shepherd. Not some distant or remote deity that is uninterested or uninvolved in our lives. He is near us. He knows us. He's our shepherd. And if the Lord is your shepherd, then that implies you're a sheep, all right? And we've talked about this, which is not meant to be a compliment. This is not David's way of saying, "You're so cute and cuddly and adorable and fuzzy you are." That's not what he's saying, all right? He's saying you're a sheep, and sheep are not fantastic at anything, okay? They don't run well. They don't see well. They can't really defend themselves. They are not the smartest members of the animal kingdom. Basically, all sheep are good at is growing hair, all right? That's what sheep do well. So David, the writer of Psalms, he says, that's us. Of course, some of us are better at growing hair than others, but that's all right. That's okay, because we have a shepherd, he says. We matter to him. We belong to him. He's looking out for us, and as a result, we have everything we need, David writes. Says he leads me. He refreshes me. He guides me. So much talk about leadership in our culture. Or this, anybody ever feel like they could use a little refreshment from time to time? Anybody here ever feel like they could use some guidance, maybe just a little wisdom as they work their way through life? And then last week, that unforgettable experience. We were reminded, even in the face of some of the deepest darkness of life, this shepherd doesn't just send you into the valley and say, "Good luck." This shepherd walks with us through the valley, because the only way through is through. The shepherd actually is closest of all when we're in the middle of those difficult moments in our lives. He goes on, he says, "I have a rod and a staff," this shepherd does, "and they comfort and protect you. I will prepare a place for you, a place of abundance. Even in the presence of your enemies, I'll provide for you even when you feel surrounded. I will anoint your head with oil. I will put blessing and favor on your life," he says. "I will make your life an overflowing life. And I will follow your life with goodness, and I will follow your life with love every single day for the rest of your life, both in this world and in the one to come," he says. "I will lead you through every step of the journey." And we sheep, we're so smart, we think, that's amazing. I'm going to get that in a frame and put it on the wall in the guest bathroom at the house. That's so catchy, right? But I'm going to live my life my way. But God's offering you a different lifestyle today. He's offering to be your shepherd today. It's more than just lovely words. It's an entire framework for life. That's why we've been calling this series Paradigm Shift. It's more than just soothing words we read at funerals or print on coffee mugs. They're profound truths that can transform the way we think, the way we feel, the way we live. But unfortunately, that's not what most people's lives look like, is it? In fact, I was thinking this week, what if Psalm 23 was rewritten to reflect the way most people go through life? Maybe some in this room. Maybe it would sound something like this: "I am my own shepherd. I have to take care of myself. I stumble through life, from purchase to purchase, from party to party, from project to project, from paycheck to paycheck. But there's no time to rest, because I'm sure what I want is just around the corner, that greener pasture. that thing that will finally satisfy my thirst. But I still haven't found what I'm looking for, and I'm tired. I have resolved to follow my heart, to pursue the easiest possible path through life, for comfort's sake, doing whatever feels right in the moment. I will do whatever it takes to avoid the darkest valleys. I'll try anything that might take my mind off the pain of life and the threat of death, even for just a moment. But nothing seems to last, and the future has me worried. I fear everything from terrorism to recession, from cancer to crime, from being overweight to being overlooked. I can't really count on anyone. I'm not sure who I can trust, so I have to watch my back. I anoint my headache with extra strength Advil, and I sure could use a drink. Make it a double. Surely monotony and mediocrity will follow me, and I will live in insecurity for the rest of my lonely life. You know anybody who's that psalm describes their life? Any chance you look at them in the mirror from time to time? Because for way too many people in our world, it's this psalm that more resembles real living versus what we read in Psalm 23. Which version's more like your life? Following a shepherd who provides for you, or clawing your way through life to get what you feel like you want on your own? Allowing him to guide you, or wandering along a path of your choosing by your rules? Feeling refreshed, feeling exhausted? Filled with peace, knowing he's with you, or petrified about what that future might hold? Walking courageously with him, or afraid of whatever might be lurking around that next corner? You don't have to live like that. See, here's the paradigm shift. He wants to be your shepherd. And what determines which version of this psalm you will live boils down to this central question: who is your shepherd? So let's take a little closer look at a few of the lines from this passage. The second part of verse 4 and then the beginning of verse 5. And like I said, last week, Scott talked about the beginning of verse 4. Here's what's written: even though I walk through the darkest valley, remember that deep down dark that we talked about last week, I will fear no evil. Why? Because you're with me, it says. And then look at these lines: your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Now, we've already talked a little bit about this idea of the shepherd's staff. It's what you picture when you kind of think of Little Bo Peep and Mary Had a Little Lamb, right? That long stick with the hook on the end when you think of a shepherd. Its primary purpose is to guide the sheep, to kind of show them the way, sometimes pull them back from danger, maybe even whack them on the backside to get them going from time to time. But that's not all this shepherd carries, David writes. David says this shepherd also has a rod. And a rod was more of a club. It was one that he'd keep tied on his waist or maybe carry in his other hand. The rod is a much heavier piece of wood. And it was mainly a tool of protection. You see, the staff is for the sheep. The rod was for the wolf and for the bear and for the lion. And any good shepherd was an expert in wielding this club to protect his flock. A couple years ago, Lori and I were fast asleep, middle of the night, in our bedroom, and we heard this huge crashing sound downstairs. And it woke us both up. And as the father of 3 kids, I have mastered the art of pretending to be asleep when I hear something at night, all right? I got really good at that by the time we were done with that phase. Anyway, there was no pretending that I hadn't heard this sound. I mean, it sounded like somebody smashed in the window and had come into the house. And so I sent Lori down. And no, I didn't do that. I sat straight up and in the dark, and instantly, right, my heart is pounding, adrenaline is flowing, I'm in fight mode. So I don't even say a word. I jump right out of bed. I grab a baseball bat that I keep next to the dresser near my side of the bed. Anybody else have something like that in your room? You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So I jump out of bed, I grab the bat, and I start down the stairs. And I have no idea what I'm going to do with this bat if somebody's actually down there, right? I don't care. I'm far more comfortable with a Bible in my hand than a bat. I'll just admit that to you. I don't know if I was guessing and hoping that just the sight of me with a baseball bat standing in my underwear would be enough to scare whoever it was, right? Because let's be honest, that mental image is frightening some of you right now, right? And you haven't even seen it in your own eyes. Anyway. No idea what I'm going to do once I get down there. And fortunately, it didn't matter. Because what I discovered after several very anxious minutes of looking around was that the sound I heard was not some intruder. We had left a dirty pot to soak in our kitchen sink along with a few other dishes. And the weight had somehow pulled the glue holding the undermounted sink. It just dropped right off the counter, okay? So you can just imagine the sound of a big stainless steel tub, big soup pot, and a bunch of glasses shattering, right? I heard all that upstairs. I think someone's here to kill us, right? No, it's just poor housekeeping on my part is what it is. So you just imagine the noise, you imagine the mess. So I traded in my bat for a mop, which is a good thing because I have way more experience with a mop than I do with a bat, let me assure you. Well, not so this shepherd. This shepherd knows exactly what to do with that club, that weapon. He can use it with deadly force. And some of you remember the famous story when earlier in his life, this same David who wrote this psalm, he volunteered to fight the enemy of his people, Goliath. Remember that story? David said, as he was sort of auditioning, if you will, for that job, he said, "There was a time when I was tending my father's sheep, and a lion came and grabbed one of the sheep from his mouth. And what did I do? I chased down that lion. I rescued that sheep from his mouth, and I struck it and killed it." It's a shepherd using his rod, his club. And sometimes we picture a shepherd like kids in a Christmas pageant, right? Sweet little kids in their dad's bathrobe with some dish towel on their head. See, friends, when it comes to protecting their sheep, a shepherd can be fierce. He doesn't mess around. And David here is alluding to what we all know. There is an evil in this world. There is real darkness in this world. We've seen it on display just this last week. Many of you know I grew up in Pittsburgh. And Tree of Life Synagogue, I've driven by that hundreds of times. My parents don't live far from there. There are enemies out there, friends. But David said, even with all those enemies, you also need to know there is a shepherd as well. And this shepherd is fierce. When danger comes, when pressure mounts, when lions prowl, when enemies attack, this shepherd has a rod and a staff, and he knows how to use them. You have a defender. You have one who will fight for you. You are not alone. The shepherd is fierce, and that can be a source of great comfort, even in the uncertainty of this world. And then he shifts gears from images of shepherding to images of celebration. From pictures of green pastures and quiet waters, he begins to paint a picture of a feast, a banquet, an abundant party. But the feast takes place in an interesting setting, it says. Look at the next lines, verse 5. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies, it says. Now, enemies come in lots of forms. Of course, for a sheep, the enemies, lions, tigers, bears, oh my, right? For us, maybe it's the diagnosis. Maybe it's the circumstance. It could be that person who stabbed you in the back. That person who's talking about you among your friends, who's undermining you at the office, that family member who's sowing poison in the family to try to turn people against you. It could be just the existence of evil in our world that leaves you frightened. It could be some internal struggle. It could be some external addiction. These enemies come in all shapes and sizes. Here's what the shepherd says. He says, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to prepare a table for you right here in the middle of your enemies. And a table was a symbol of abundance and celebration and provision. I'm going to put that table right here in the middle of your enemies. And we think, that's nice of you, God. I like meals. I like abundance. But actually, I'd rather the verse say, I'm going to prepare a table for you and me, and I'm going to smoke your enemies, right? That's what I wish it said. I want a table in your presence, not those guys. I want you to wipe all of my enemies out. And he says, here's how we're going to do this. I'm going to set this table of abundance and plenty right here in the presence of your enemies. But remember, I won't leave you alone. I have a rod and a staff. I'll fight for you. You are under my protection. I'll be there with you. But it's going to be right there in the middle of the challenge, right in the middle of the storm, right in the middle of the struggle. Whatever attack you think is coming your way or is on the horizon, I'm going to prepare a table for you right in the middle of it. Here's the most important thing. Following this shepherd does not eliminate the storms of life. But following this shepherd gives you the strength to endure and fight your way through. Now, why would he do this? Why not just smoke them? Now, there are things I don't always understand. I don't pretend to. But here's some things I've learned. I've learned it's not always God's plan to immediately get rid of the pressure. But it's always his plan to be with you in the middle of it. To prepare a table for you in the midst of the storm. To provide for you in the midst of the pressure. My first prayer is always, God, take this pressure away. And sometimes he does. But more often he says, if you'll work with me, if you'll keep your eyes on me, if you'll trust me, I can use this pressure for your good. It could actually help you get stronger. It could help you see something in new ways. It could help form your heart and mold your character. It could help steer you down a better path. I can work all things, including this pressure, for your good. See, here's something else I've learned. When those around us see us standing strong in the face of pressure or storms, even in the middle of the really hard stuff, people around us wonder, what does she have that I don't? What does he know that I don't? And the answer is this: you have a shepherd who leads you, who refreshes you, who guides you, who walks even through the hardest things of life with you, whose protection gives you comfort and peace. In our gathering last weekend, many of you were here. You'll never forget it. I certainly won't. Because we heard that painful story of finding hope in the face of terrible loss. And if you weren't here, I hope you'll go onto the website and watch it. Take a box of Kleenex with you. Those of us who were here last week, how loudly does Alexia's example speak to the people that she knows? In light of what their family has endured, holding on to faith catches people's attention. It has a different level of credibility. When we can have peace that passes understanding in the middle of the storm, that's when people around us take notice. When our claims of faith actually prove to be real. Because remember, following this shepherd does not mean eliminating the storms of life. It just means giving you the strength to endure and fight your way through. He prepares a table for me in the presence of my enemies. So the key is learning to follow the shepherd in the face of enemies, in the middle of the storm, not just after the pressure has passed. Because if we don't learn to follow him when the enemy's around, when the pressure is on, when the challenge hits, when things get a little hairy, the minute things get intense, we'll panic. We'll try to go back to being our own shepherd. Instead of the abundance God puts before us, we'll think he's holding out on us, and we'll go looking for that abundance in other places. Our sheep-like instincts will kick in, and we may run right off a cliff. This is about learning to focus on the shepherd, trust the shepherd, build our lives on the shepherd, finding comfort and peace in the rod and staff of this shepherd, even when I feel overwhelmed or surrounded. Because there are always enemies around. And as I said, we saw it again this week. The Bible says there is an enemy. The Bible refers to him as the evil one, the devil, Satan. Peter refers to him in language that sort of resonates with the whole sheep imagery in 1 Peter 5:8. 1 Peter 5:8. It says, "Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour." Jesus refers to him as a thief, John 10:10, listen to what Jesus says. Well-known passage. It says, "The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy." He comes to rob your peace and kill your hope and destroy your faith. And he's good at it, friends. In this week of heavy news, there was one little story that didn't get a whole lot of attention, but I just heard about this week. The BBC reported a shop owner in Belgium reported that a group of guys came into the shop to rob him. And the owner convinced the guys that he didn't have very much money in the store yet because they just opened. But if they came back at the end of the day, there'd be way more for them to steal. And the 5 guys actually bought it. This is absolutely true. You can look it up. And so when they came back at closing time, the police were waiting in the back of the shop and arrested all 5 of them and took them in. The article joked, the worst criminals in all of Belgium, right? I mean, this is like an episode of World's Dumbest Criminals. Absolutely true. You need to know, this thief is much better than that. He's not quite as easy to brush off. He is sly. And when this good shepherd prepares a table of abundance before you, when he lays out his spread in front of you, and you pull up a chair, you got to watch, because that evil one, that enemy, he'll try to pull up a chair too. He'll try to slide into a seat right next to you and begin to whisper into your ear. You know you're not going to make it. You know this enemy is too great. You know if he loved you, he'd just take the pain away anyway. Everybody's against you. There's too much evil in this world. You don't have what it takes. God can't forgive that sin. You really can't trust him to meet all your needs. He calls this abundance. Be your own shepherd. Take care of yourself. And let's be honest, you don't really deserve to be at this table anyway. See, Jesus says that enemy, that whisperer, that accuser, which is what the word Satan means. Jesus says that thief, he comes only to steal and kill and destroy. But I have come, Jesus says, that they may have life and have it to the full, overflowing, much like the cup that we read about in Psalm 23. Does that sound familiar? And then look at what Jesus says. Reaching back to this same image from Psalm 23, he says, I am the good shepherd, Jesus says. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. Of course, when Jesus said this, they had no idea what he meant. They had no idea how serious he was. They thought he was good. They just didn't know how good. Because this is not just any shepherd. This good shepherd was willing to become one of the sheep. You see, when Jesus came, God in the flesh, he lived just like the rest of us. He went through all the things we go through. He knows what it feels like to feel pressure, to be surrounded by enemies. He knows what it feels like to be betrayed by friends. He knows what it feels like to have people jealous of him, or to be falsely accused, or to have people plotting against him. He knows the pain of loss and grief. He knows what it feels like to be hungry and cold. He knows what it feels like to feel alone. He knows all of that. And some in this room, you feel surrounded. You might feel overwhelmed, because in our world, it's easy to feel that way. There is an enemy on the horizon, and you don't know what to do. But you need to know the shepherd gets it. He knows how you feel. He is fierce when it comes to protecting his sheep, so you have nothing to fear. He prepares a place for you even in the presence of those enemies. Whatever you're facing, don't listen to the lies of the enemy. Don't give him a seat at that table. Keep your eyes focused on this shepherd. Because not only did this good shepherd become one of the sheep to experience what we experience, this shepherd, he became the sacrificial lamb. He literally laid down his life for his sheep, for people, those he loves. He took all the sins of the sheep on himself when he died on a cross. That's how good this shepherd is. That's how deeply he loves us. That's what he did to finally defeat this enemy once and for all. And that's what we remember when we celebrate this experience we call the Lord's Supper or communion. He invites all of us sheep to the table, and he offers these symbols, the bread and the juice, representing his body and his blood, symbols of the sacrifice he made to take away your sins and mine. It's interesting, 2,000 years ago, when Jesus established this celebration with his disciples, the Bible tells us he did it with a table and a cup. Who knows if he had this very imagery from Psalm 23 in mind? Because he knew there were enemies lurking. This table was prepared in the presence of his enemies, quite literally. And yet, under all of that pressure, in the midst of that threat, what did he say? He said, don't be afraid. My peace I give you. I don't give as the world gives. So don't let your hearts be troubled. And do not be afraid. And it's that reassurance, it's that good news, it's that hope, it's that comfort that we cling to as we prepare to eat these symbols together now. And here's how we're going to do it. The band's going to come and begin to lead us in worship, and as they do, the trays will be passed. I want you to take the bread and the juice cup and just hold it for a little bit. And during the song, there will be some prompts that will come up on the screen that will guide us through some thoughts, and then will tell us when to take that meal together. And so just pay close attention to that screen and engage with that experience as you hold on to those symbols until the screen says to take it. As we honor the good shepherd who lays down his life for his sheep. Friends, Jesus is that good shepherd. The most important question of all, though, is he your shepherd? Is he your shepherd? Just bow your head with me. So let me ask you, with your head bowed, just sitting quietly, what has you scared? Is it a difficult situation? Is it some uncertainty about the future? Is it just the headlines, the evil in this world? We can't be naive, friends. There is an enemy. And Jesus said his only objective is to steal, kill, and destroy. But my hope for you this morning is that you'll be reminded you have a shepherd. You can live his psalm and not the other one. His rod and his staff can comfort you. He can prepare a table of abundance before you, even in the middle of the storm and the pressure. He invites you to focus on him. He invites you to ignore those whispers from the enemy. Don't give him a seat at your table. Because this shepherd gets it. And he invites you, just keep your eyes on me. Just keep your eyes on me. Lord, there are some in this room who the truth is have been living as their own shepherd. And so maybe this is going to be a big moment when they say, I've been running my life my way, I've stumbled into all kinds of messes. And Lord, I simply come to you and I ask you to make me new. Will you be my shepherd? Not some one-time prayer that just sort of takes care of some business, but as a whole new way of life. Will you show me what it means to follow you? To enjoy your gift of a fresh start and a new beginning, salvation. Some maybe need to say that to you right now. Others, as we worship and then as we eat, we once again resolve, you are our shepherd, O Lord. Lead us. We pray all these things in the name of the Good Shepherd. Amen.